Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm just chilling in Minecraft tonight, building, exploring, and letting the blocks do their thing in the background. But while I play, I've got something way more dramatic to share with you. Relationship stories straight from Reddit that will leave you questioning how people can treat the ones they claim to love. We're talking betrayals, secrets, unexpected twists, and those moments where trust shatters in ways you never see coming. So grab a snack, settle in, and let Minecraft be the calm backdrop while we dive into the chaos of relationships gone wrong. Trust me, these are stories you're not going to want to miss. Alright, let's kick things off with a story that shows how betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from the very person you thought you'd spend your life with. This one's titled, "My fiancé secretly sold my grandma's ring to buy a gaming console. Now he's begging for forgiveness." I, 26F, was engaged to my fiancé, Chris, 28M, and for the most part, I thought things were solid between us. We'd been together for 3 years, and I really believed he was the one. But everything changed a few weeks ago when I noticed something strange about my jewellery box. My grandmother's engagement ring was gone. It wasn't flashy or expensive compared to modern rings, but it was priceless to me. My grandma had worn it for 50 years before passing it down to me. It was the kind of heirloom you dream of wearing on your wedding day. At first, I thought maybe I had misplaced it, so I tore apart my entire apartment. Drawers, boxes, even under the couch cushions. Nothing. When I asked Chris if he had seen it, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "No, maybe you just lost it." Something about his tone made my stomach drop. He was way too casual for something that meant so much to me. I pressed a little harder, and after a long, tense silence, he admitted it. He had pawned my grandmother's ring. Why? Because he wanted to buy the newest gaming console and a bunch of accessories. He told me he thought I wouldn't notice since I didn't wear it every day. He framed it like it was no big deal, like it was just a piece of jewellery collecting dust. I saw red. I couldn't believe he had taken something that didn't belong to him, something tied to my family, my grandmother's memory, and sold it for video games. I asked him if he even realised how messed up that was, and he just kept saying, "I'll get it back, calm down." Except when I called the pawn shop, they told me the ring had already been resold. Gone, just like that. I was devastated. I cried for days, not just over the ring, but over what it represented. Chris tried to brush it off, saying I was overreacting. "It's just a ring, babe. We'll make our own memories," he said, as if that excused his betrayal. My family found out, and let's just say Chris became public enemy number 1. My mum was furious. My dad told me flat out that if Chris could do something this selfish now, I should think long and hard about what married life with him would look like. My friends weren't kinder. One even said, "If he can steal from you for video games, what else would he do if he really wanted something?" I confronted Chris again, telling him how deeply he had hurt me. His defense? "I only did it because I love gaming, and I didn't think you'd understand." He begged me to forgive him, promised he'd make it up to me, even said he'd save money to try and buy back the ring, though we both knew it was already gone forever. Now I'm at a crossroads. Do I forgive a man who thought so little of my feelings, my family's history, and our future? Or do I accept that this was a red flag I can't ignore? To this day, I still don't have an answer, but I know one thing. Trust once broken is nearly impossible to repair, and sometimes the clearest view of someone's character comes not from how they act during the big moments, but in the small selfish decisions they make when they think no one's watching. Moving on, this next story takes us into the heart of betrayal, because nothing stings quite like discovering the person you trusted most was living a double life. It's titled, "I found out my wife has a second phone she only uses when I travel, and I finally learned why." I, 35M, travel a lot for work, usually 1 to 2 weeks at a time. My wife, Lauren, 33F, has always been supportive about my career, and I never had any reason to doubt her loyalty. We've been married 7 years, built a home together, even talked about starting a family soon. But a month ago, I noticed something strange. I was home from a business trip, and while she was showering, I heard a buzz on the nightstand. It wasn't her normal phone. It was a smaller, older model I'd never seen before. Curious, I picked it up. The screen lit up with a text. Had a great time last night. Same time next week. My heart dropped. When Lauren came out, I asked her point blank about the phone. She froze for a second before grabbing it out of my hand and saying, "It's just an old work phone, nothing important." But she wouldn't unlock it. That was all the confirmation I needed. Later that night, when she fell asleep, I quietly checked her purse. The phone was there, unlocked. What I saw still makes my stomach churn. Dozens of messages with one man. Let's call him Tyler. They'd been meeting up every time I left town. Dinner dates, hotel rooms, even inside jokes about me not suspecting anything. The last text read, "Don't worry, he'll never find out." The next morning I confronted her again. At first, she tried to deny it. Then she tried to downplay it. "It's just flirting. It doesn't mean anything." Finally, she broke down crying, admitting it had been going on for almost a year. She claimed she felt lonely when I travelled, and Tyler filled the gap. I felt like my whole marriage had been built on lies. All those times I called her from hotel rooms, telling her I missed her, she was probably texting him. All those moments, I was working hard for our future. She was building memories with someone else. I packed a bag and left that night. Since then, she's been blowing up my phone, begging me to come home, promising she'll cut off contact with Tyler. She even suggested therapy, but how do you rebuild a foundation that was rotting for a year without me knowing? I keep replaying it in my head. If I hadn't stumbled across that second phone, would she have ever told me? Or would I have kept living in ignorance, building a life with someone who saw me as plan B? I don't know if I can forgive this. I don't know if I even want to try. All I know is that the second phone revealed the kind of person she really is, and I can't unsee it. Wow, this one really hits hard. Imagine working your job, travelling to provide for your family, only to come home and find your partner living a second life behind your back. The fact that she kept a whole extra phone just for this is not a mistake, it's premeditated. If it were me, I don't think I could stay. Cheating is one thing, but the level of planning, lying, and covering up, there's no coming back from that. What do you guys think? Could you ever forgive someone if you found out they had a secret phone like this? Now let's jump into another wild one, because sometimes the biggest betrayals don't come from strangers, but from the person you thought was proud to have you in their life. This one's titled, "My Boyfriend Told His Friends." I was just a temporary girlfriend, so I made sure it was permanent. I, 24F, had been dating my boyfriend, Jake, 26M, for about 10 months. Things between us felt serious. We spent weekends together, met each other's families, and even started discussing plans for next year's vacations. To me, this wasn't a fling. This was the start of something real. One evening, Jake invited me to hang out with his college friends at a local bar. I was excited. I thought it was my chance to finally bond with the people he considered closest to him. At first, things were fine. We were laughing, sharing stories, and I honestly felt like I was fitting right in. Then when Jake went up to the bar to order drinks, I overheard one of his friends whisper something that made my blood run cold. He said, "So, is she still the placeholder, or are you actually going to commit to this one?" Another chimed in with, "Yeah, how much longer before you trade her out?" I froze. My mind was racing. Placeholder? Trade me out? When Jake returned, he laughed at their comments and said, loud enough for me to hear, "Relax, guys. You know how it is. She's just a temporary girlfriend until I'm ready to settle down." His friends laughed with him. He didn't even flinch, didn't glance at me, didn't seem to care that I was sitting right there, hearing it all. I sat in silence for the rest of the night, trying not to cry in front of his friends. On the drive home, I confronted him. He brushed it off with, "Babe, it's just guy talk. They don't mean anything by it. Don't take it so seriously." But to me, it meant everything. For 10 months, I'd given him my time, my energy, my love, only to find out he saw me as disposable, someone to pass the time with until something better came along. So I started planning. A week later, Jake's family invited me to his sister's birthday dinner. I decided to go, not because I wanted to support him, but because I wanted the truth to come out in front of the people who would see through his lies. During dinner, when his mum asked how our relationship was going, I smiled sweetly and said, "Well, I thought it was serious, but apparently Jake just told his friends I'm a temporary girlfriend until he's ready to settle down." The table went silent. His mum looked horrified. His dad glared at him. His sister asked if that was true. Jake stumbled, stammered, tried to say it was a joke, but the damage was done. I excused myself politely and left. Later that night, I texted him a single line. "You don't get to keep me as temporary anything. We're done." The fallout? His sister messaged me, days later apologising on his behalf, saying their whole family was embarrassed. His mum actually called me to say she was sorry her son didn't respect me the way he should have. As for Jake, he kept trying to contact me, sending long texts about how he didn't mean it, that he was just trying to save face with his friends. But here's the thing. People reveal their true selves when they don't think you're listening. And what I heard that night was enough to know I deserved better. Honestly, if someone can sit there and laugh about you being temporary, believe them, because to them, you already are. Wow, the audacity of calling someone temporary while they're sitting right there. If it were me, I'd walk too. Love isn't supposed to be about keeping options open. It's about respect. And once that's gone, there's nothing left worth saving. The next story is one of those that shows how lies have a way of surfacing in the smallest details. It's titled, "She Said She Was on a Girls' Trip. Then I Saw the Hotel Room Charge in Our Joint Account." I, 30M, had been with my girlfriend, Rachel, 28F, for almost 4 years. Things between us seemed steady. We lived together, shared bills, even had a joint savings account we were building toward a house. Trust wasn't something I thought I needed to worry about. A couple of months ago, Rachel told me she was going on a weekend girls' trip with her college friends. Nothing unusual. She'd done it before, and I figured she deserved some time away. She left Friday morning, suitcase in hand, kissed me goodbye, and said she'd call me that night. Except she didn't. Her texts were short, vague. "Having fun, we'll call later." She never sent photos, never mentioned her friends by name, just the girls. That itch in my stomach started, but I brushed it off. I trusted her. On Sunday night, she came home. She was cheerful, said the trip was exactly what she needed. I didn't push. But 2 days later, I was checking our joint bank account to pay some bills when I noticed something odd. A hotel charge for 2 nights at a boutique hotel in a city 2 hours away. And here's the kicker. It wasn't booked under a group stay. It was a single king suite. I confronted her calmly, asking why the account showed a charge for a king suite at a hotel she never mentioned. Her face drained of colour. First, she claimed it was a mistake, that maybe the hotel billed wrong. When I pressed harder, she admitted she hadn't gone on a girls' trip at all. She'd spent the weekend with a co-worker. She swore it was innocent, that they just needed space to talk about life. But the moment I heard the words, "King Suite," I knew what had happened. She cried, begged me to forgive her, promised it would never happen again. But all I could think about was how easily she had lied, how she'd kissed me goodbye, knowing she was heading into someone else's arms. That night, I packed a bag and left to stay with a friend. Since then, she's been texting non-stop, alternating between apologies and anger, saying I should understand she was confused. But confusion doesn't lead to lying about friends and sneaking off to a hotel. The hardest part isn't losing her. It's realising the trust I thought we had was an illusion. You know, sometimes it isn't the big fights or the obvious betrayals that end a relationship. Sometimes it's as small as a hotel charge you weren't supposed to see, and suddenly the whole truth unravels. If your partner's stories don't add up, it's usually because they were never true to begin with. The following story is a painful reminder that sometimes the people closest to us create the deepest wounds. It's titled, "My husband claimed he was too busy for date night, but I saw him out with another woman." I, 32F, had been married to my husband, Eric, 34M, for 6 years. Like most couples, we had our ups and downs, but I believed we were strong. We had routines, Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, Friday night movies, and at least one planned date night a week to keep the spark alive. About 2 months ago, I suggested a Friday date night like usual. He hesitated, then told me he was slammed with work and would probably need to stay late at the office. I was a little disappointed, but I brushed it off. Work happens. But then it started happening more often. One cancelled date night turned into 2, then 3. Suddenly he was working late multiple nights a week, and every time I suggested joining him for lunch or bringing him dinner, he'd get weirdly defensive. "Don't bother, I'll be in meetings all night." My gut told me something wasn't right. One Friday, when he texted again that he couldn't make our date night, I decided to go to the office anyway. I figured if he was truly working, a quick coffee drop-off would be a nice surprise. But when I arrived, the building was dark. The receptionist looked confused when I asked if Eric was still in. She told me he'd left hours ago. My stomach dropped. I drove around aimlessly for a bit, trying to decide if I was just being paranoid. Then, at a red light downtown, I saw him, my husband, sitting at an outdoor restaurant, across from a woman I didn't recognize. She was laughing, touching his arm, and he looked happy, happier than I'd seen him in months. I froze, watching from my car as they shared dinner and wine like a couple on a date. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold the steering wheel. I thought about storming up to the table, demanding answers. But instead, I drove home in silence, my mind replaying the scene over and over. When he came home later that night, I asked him again if he'd been working late. He nodded casually, kissed me on the cheek, and said he was exhausted. That's when I knew. He was lying straight to my face. The next morning I confronted him. At first he denied everything, said I must have been seeing things. But when I described the restaurant, the woman, even the colour of her dress, his face went pale. He finally admitted he had been spending time with a co-worker, but swore it was just dinners, nothing physical, according to him. But in my heart, I knew the intimacy I'd witnessed, the laughter, the touches, the comfort, wasn't just dinners. It was betrayal, plain and simple. I told him I needed space and left to stay with my sister. Since then, he's been calling non-stop, insisting he wants to work on us, but every time I picture him across the table from that woman, choosing her over me, I feel like something inside me breaks all over again. It's strange how fast trust can shatter. You spend years building it, brick by brick, memory by memory, and in one night, with one lie, it all comes crashing down. You know, sometimes the real heartbreak isn't catching someone in the act. It's realizing how easy it was for them to look you in the eyes and lie about it. That's the kind of thing you can't unsee, and no amount of apologies can really erase. The second post in this lineup is one of those quiet betrayals that lingers in your mind long after it happens. It's titled, "I accidentally learned my girlfriend calls me by a different name in her journal." I, 27M, had been dating Claire, 25F, for just under a year. Everything seemed solid. Dinners, together, weekend getaways, long conversations about our goals. She had even met my parents and fit in with my family, like she'd always been there. For the first time in years, I let myself believe I'd found someone I could really build a life with. One evening, I was at her apartment while she was showering. I went to her desk to grab a pen, but in the process, I knocked over a small stack of notebooks. As I bent down to pick them up, one fell open. I know I shouldn't have looked, but the page staring up at me had my name written. Or so I thought, except when I looked closer, it wasn't my name at all. It was another man's, not just once, but dozens of times, in long, flowing sentences about her feelings, her dreams, her fears, sentences where she should have written me, but she wrote him. The entries weren't from before we started dating either. They were recent, within the last 2 months. I sat there in shock, rereading lines that made it clear she was writing about me, but using someone else's name in place of mine. Sentences like, "I love how he makes me laugh when I'm having a bad day," or "Dinner tonight felt perfect. Just sitting with him makes the world feel lighter." That should have been about me. But every time, the wrong name was there, staring back at me like a red flag I couldn't ignore. When she came out of the shower, I didn't bring it up right away. I couldn't even find the words. She kissed me, asked if I wanted to order food, and I just nodded, my head spinning. The whole night felt like I was living in someone else's skin, like maybe I was the replacement in a role she wished belonged to another man. Later that week, I finally confronted her. I asked, casually at first, if she ever wrote in her journals about me. She looked startled, then defensive, then admitted she sometimes slipped and wrote another name. According to her, it was just a habit because she used to journal a lot about an ex she hadn't fully gotten over. That explanation didn't sit right with me. It wasn't a single slip-up. It was page after page, all recent, all replacing me with someone else. She swore up and down that I was the one she wanted, that the journaling was just a way of processing emotions, but the damage was done. Every time she said my name after that, I wondered if in her head she was still thinking of him. Every "I love you" felt like it had a shadow behind it. We tried to move forward, but I couldn't shake it. Eventually I told her I couldn't be with someone who, even in her private thoughts, still imagined herself with someone else. She cried, insisted she didn't mean for it to hurt me, but I walked away. Because honestly, I deserve to be with someone who loves me by name, not as a stand-in for the past. It's strange how something so small, a name in a notebook, can unravel everything you thought was secure. But in relationships, the details matter. And once you see the truth in someone's private words, it's almost impossible to unsee it. The next story in our lineup shows how some relationships aren't built on love at all, but on constant tests that eventually push the other person too far. It's titled, "My Partner Keeps Testing Me with Fake Scenarios, so I set up a real one to teach them a lesson." I, 29M, had been dating Sarah, 27F, for almost a year. At first, she was everything I thought I wanted. Funny, outgoing, and endlessly curious about me. But early on, I noticed a pattern that started out small and eventually consumed our relationship. She loved to test me. It started with silly things, like pretending she didn't like my favourite movie just to see if I'd defend it, or pretending she forgot my birthday to gauge my reaction. Annoying, yes, but harmless enough that I brushed it off. But over time, the tests escalated. One night, she told me she'd been offered a job in another state and wanted to know if I'd do long distance. I spent hours supporting her, helping her plan, even researching housing. A few days later, she admitted it was fake, just another test to see how committed I was. Another time, she pretended her ex had texted her, asking to meet up. She watched closely to see if I'd get jealous or try to forbid her from going. When I told her I trusted her judgment but that I'd be uncomfortable, she smirked and admitted there was no text. Just another test. I can't describe how exhausting it became. Every conversation felt like a pop quiz. Was she telling me the truth? Or was this another setup? I started feeling paranoid, second-guessing every word she said. Finally, I decided if she wanted tests, I'd give her one she couldn't manipulate. A few weeks later, I told her I'd be working late at the office, but instead, I went to a nearby coffee shop with a clear view of our apartment. A friend of mine agreed to stop by the building while I was away and strike up a casual conversation with her, just to see how she'd respond. Sure enough, within 20 minutes of me leaving, she was outside on the steps, scrolling through her phone. My friend walked up, asked for directions, and they chatted. But then Sarah started laughing, leaning in closer, and within minutes, she was giving him her number. When I came home that night, I asked how her evening was. She said it was boring and that she missed me. That's when I told her what I'd seen and that the man she gave her number to was my friend. Her face turned pale. She stammered, tried to say she only did it to test if I was watching. But I didn't buy it. She had failed her own game. I told her plainly that I was done. If our entire relationship was going to be built on manipulation and fabricated scenarios, then there was no trust to begin with. She cried, begged for another chance, swore she would change. But by then, I was too drained to keep playing. Looking back, I think what hurt the most wasn't her lying or even giving her number away. It was realizing she never trusted me enough to just believe in the relationship. Everything had to be a test, a trick, a setup. And when love feels like an exam, you can never pass. The only right answer is to walk away. The last story in this set is one of those where the truth doesn't come crashing down all at once. It seeps out slowly until you realize the person you thought you knew has been living a completely different life beside you. It's titled, "I found out my husband of 10 years has been running a secret online dating profile. I, 36F, have been married to my husband, Daniel, 38M, for a decade. We've built a life together. House, 2 kids, family vacations, all the usual milestones. From the outside, it probably looked like we had it all. And for the longest time, I believed that too. Then, a few months ago, I was on our shared laptop late at night, trying to order some birthday gifts for my sister. When I opened the browser, his email was still logged in. Normally, I wouldn't snoop, but a notification popped up in the corner from a site I didn't recognize, something that looked suspiciously like a dating app. Curious, I clicked, and there it was, a full profile with his photo, his age, his bio. Only, he wasn't listed as married. His profile said, "Single, just looking for fun." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely scroll, but I forced myself to keep reading. The bio wasn't just some throwaway line, it was thoughtful, detailed. He described himself as adventurous, spontaneous, someone who loves trying new restaurants. Funny thing is, those were all qualities he hadn't shown me in years. It felt like he had poured his real personality into this fake life, while I got the leftovers at home. I spent the next week quietly watching. Every night, after he'd go to bed, I'd check his inbox. Message after message with women from our city. Flirty, suggestive, some of them talking about meeting up. One even referenced a dinner they'd had last month. My stomach dropped when I realised that was the same weekend he told me he was at a work conference. I finally confronted him one morning. He looked me straight in the eyes and denied it, even as I held his profile up on the laptop screen. "It's not what you think," he said. "It's just for fun." I never meant to act on it, but I had already read the messages. I knew he had crossed that line. He eventually admitted to meeting a few women, swearing it was just dinner, nothing more. But by then it didn't matter. The betrayal wasn't just about what he did with them. It was about the secret life he'd built while lying to my face every day. I packed up the kids that afternoon and went to stay with my sister. He's been begging me to come home ever since, sending long apologies, promising therapy, swearing he'll delete everything. But I keep thinking about how carefully he constructed that profile, how many times he chose to log in and message strangers instead of talking to me. When someone invests more effort into their fantasy life than their real one, that tells you everything you need to know about where their heart is. And I don't think I can ever come back from that. Sometimes, it's not just the cheating that breaks you. It's realizing how much energy they spent pretending to be someone else, while you were standing right there the whole time, waiting for them to just be honest. And that brings us to the end of today's lineup. We've seen just how messy relationships can get, whether it's lies hidden in journals, endless tests that tear trust apart, or double lives built behind dating profiles. Each story proves that love isn't just about romance, it's about honesty, respect, and the willingness to show up for each other without masks. If you've ever been in a relationship that left you second-guessing everything, you know how heavy that weight can feel. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's the only way to protect your peace. Thanks for spending some time here with me today. If you enjoyed this deep dive into relationship chaos, don't forget to stick around. there's always another unbelievable story waiting just around the corner.